As a retired FBI agent, I thought I had seen it all. The lies, the deceit, the dark underbelly of the human psyche. But nothing could have prepared me for the betrayal I experienced at the hands of my own family. When I discovered that I had been excluded from the annual 4th of July barbecue because I made people uncomfortable, something inside me snapped. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands, to expose the secrets and the lies that had been festering beneath the surface of our picture-perfect facade. And in doing so, I uncovered a truth that would flip the narrative and change the course of our family forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The sun was just starting to peek through the blinds of my study when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I glanced at the clock on my desk, frowning slightly. 8 a.m. Who could be visiting at this hour on a national holiday? I pushed myself up from my chair, my joints creaking in protest. Age had a way of sneaking up on you, of making even the simplest movements feel like a chore. But I refused to let it slow me down, to let it dull the sharp edges of my mind or the fire in my belly. I made my way to the front door, peering through the peephole with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. There, standing on my front porch with a plate of cookies in her hands and a nervous smile on her face, was my daughter-in-law, Julia. I felt a flicker of surprise, followed immediately by a sense of unease. Julia and I had always had a complicated relationship, a dance of forced politeness and barely concealed tension. She was the perfect politician's wife, all smooth charm and calculated poise, but I had never fully trusted her, never felt like she was being entirely honest with me or with herself. I opened the door, schooling my features into a neutral expression. Julia, this is a surprise. What brings you by so early on the 4th? She shifted from foot to foot, her smile faltering slightly. Walter, I'm sorry to drop in unannounced. I just wanted to clear the air, I suppose. I raised an eyebrow, stepping aside to let her enter. Clear the air? About what exactly? She walked past me into the living room, setting the plate of cookies down on the coffee table. I noticed that her hands were trembling slightly, belying the confidence in her voice. About the barbecue, she said, turning to face me. I know that you were probably expecting an invitation, and I wanted to explain why we didn't send one. I felt a cold sensation in the pit of my stomach, a sense of dread that I couldn't quite explain. Go on, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Julia took a deep breath, clasping her hands in front of her. Walter, you know that we all love you very much. You're an important part of this family, and we value your presence in our lives. But lately there have been some concerns about your behavior. I frowned, crossing my arms over my chest. Concerns? What kind of concerns? She bit her lip, looking down at the floor. It's just that, you can be a bit intense sometimes, Walter. A bit intimidating. And with the kids there, and all of our friends and neighbors, we just thought it might be best if you sat this one out. For everyone's comfort. I stared at her, feeling like I had been slapped. Intense, intimidating. I had spent my entire career in service to my country, in pursuit of truth and justice and the rule of law. And now my own family was telling me that I made them uncomfortable, that I wasn't welcome at their precious barbecue. I felt a flush of anger rising in my cheeks, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. I see, I said, my tone icy And did my son have anything to say about this decision? Or was it just you and your friends Julia who decided that I wasn't fit for polite company? She flinched at my words, taking a step back. Walter, please. This isn't personal. We just want everyone to have a good time, to feel relaxed and at ease. And sometimes your presence can be a bit overwhelming. I let out a harsh laugh, shaking my head. Overwhelming, right. Because God forbid anyone feel a bit challenged or uncomfortable in the presence of a man who has dedicated his life to seeking the truth, to exposing the lies and the secrets that people would rather keep hidden. Julia's face paled, her eyes widening slightly. Walter, I don't know what you're implying, but— Oh, I think you do, Julia, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I think you know exactly what I'm implying. Because you see, I may be retired from the Bureau, but I've never stopped being an investigator. And lately I've been noticing some things, some inconsistencies and discrepancies that have been nagging at me. I took a step closer to her, my gaze boring into hers, like the fact that your husband, my son, has been spending an awful lot of time at the office lately, working late nights and weekends on cases that don't seem to exist. Or the fact that you've been spotted around town with a man who definitely isn't your husband, looking awfully cozy and familiar. Julia's mouth fell open, her face draining of color. Walter, I don't know what you think you saw, but I can assure you— Save it, I snapped, cutting her off. I don't want to hear any more of your lies, Julia. I've had enough of the deceit and the manipulation, enough of being treated like a senile old fool who can't be trusted with the truth. I turned away from her, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and betrayal. You want me to stay away from your precious barbecue? Fine. But know this. I won't rest until I've uncovered every last secret, every last lie that you and your cronies have been hiding. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. I could hear Julia's sharp intake of breath behind me, could feel the weight of her stare on the back of my neck. But I didn't turn around. Didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing the pain and the hurt in my eyes. You should go, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. And tell my son that if he wants to talk to me, he knows where to find me. But I won't be a party to your little charade any longer, Julia. Not now. Not ever. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. And then, finally, I heard the sound of Julia's footsteps retreating, the soft click of the front door closing behind her. I sank down onto the couch, my head in my hands. I felt like I had aged a decade in the span of a few minutes, like the foundations of my world had been shaken to their very core. But beneath the shock and the hurt, I could feel a new emotion taking root, a fierce and unrelenting sense of determination. Julia and her ilk might think they could push me aside, that they could keep their secrets and their lies hidden forever. But they had underestimated me, had forgotten who I was and what I was capable of. I was Walter Dean, the best damn investigator the Bureau had ever seen. And I wouldn't rest until I had exposed the truth, until I had flipped the narrative and brought the light of justice to the darkest corners of my own family's history. With a grim smile, I pushed myself to my feet and headed for my study. I had work to do, a mystery to unravel, and a reckoning to bring about. And heaven help anyone who stood in my way. The next few days passed in a blur of activity and investigation. I threw myself into the task of uncovering the truth about my son and daughter-in-law, of piecing together the clues and the evidence that would expose their lies and bring their carefully constructed facade crumbling down. I started with the basics, the foundation of any good investigation: surveillance and background checks. I dusted off my old equipment, the cameras and microphones and tracking devices that had been gathering dust in my closet for years, and set to work. I followed Julia's every move, documenting her comings and goings, with a meticulous eye for detail. I watched as she met with the mystery man in quiet cafes and secluded parks, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. I listened in on her phone calls, my heart sinking with every word of deception and betrayal. But it wasn't just Julia that I was interested in. I also turned my attention to my son, to the man who had once been the apple of my eye, the pride and joy of my life. I had always known that he was ambitious, that he had a ruthless streak when it came to getting what he wanted. But I had never imagined that he would stoop to the levels of corruption and deceit that I was uncovering. As I dug deeper into his work at the law firm, I began to uncover a web of bribes and kickbacks, of backroom deals and shady transactions that made my stomach turn. I found evidence of money laundering and tax evasion, of clients who were little more than fronts for organized crime. And at the center of it all was my son, the rising star of the legal world, the man who had once looked up to me with such admiration and respect. Now I saw him for what he truly was, a liar and a cheat, a man who would stop at nothing to get ahead, no matter who he hurt or betrayed in the process. It was a bitter pill to swallow, a truth that cut me to the very core of my being. But I refused to let it break me, to let it shake my resolve or my determination to see justice done. And so I pressed on, gathering evidence and building my case with the same dogged determination that had made me one of the Bureau's most respected agents. I called in favors from old contacts, pulled strings and greased palms to get the information I needed. And slowly but surely the pieces began to fall into place, the picture of corruption and deceit becoming clearer with each passing day. But even as I reveled in the thrill of the hunt, even as I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with closing in on my prey, I couldn't shake the sense of unease that had taken root in my gut, the feeling that I was walking into a trap of my own making. Because the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. I started to notice strange cars parked outside my house, shadowy figures watching me from a distance. I received anonymous threats and warnings, messages that made it clear that I was treading on very thin ice. And then one night, as I was poring over the latest batch of evidence in my study, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. The unmistakable click of a gun being cocked behind me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. And then slowly I turned around, my eyes widening in shock and disbelief at the sight that greeted me. There, standing in the doorway with a pistol pointed straight at my head, was my son. "Hello, Dad," he said, his voice cold and flat. "I think it's time we had a little chat." I stared at him, my mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts and emotions. Anger, betrayal, a deep and aching sense of loss. But beneath it all, a flicker of something else, a grim sense of satisfaction that I had finally pushed him to this point, that I had forced him to reveal his true colors. "A chat?" I said, my voice steady, despite the fear coursing through my veins. "Is that what you call it? When you point a gun?" At your own father's head?" He smiled. A cold and humorless thing. "Oh, I think we're well past the point of polite conversation, don't you? You've been sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, Dad, asking questions that are better left unanswered." I let out a harsh laugh, shaking my head. "Better for whom, son? For you and your cronies, with your bribes and your kickbacks and your dirty little secrets? Or for the people you've been stepping on and exploiting, the lives you've been ruining in your climb to the top?" His face twisted in anger, his grip tightening on the gun. "You don't know what you're talking about, old man. You think you're so righteous, so above it all. But you have no idea what it takes to succeed in this world, the compromises and the sacrifices that have to be made." I stood up slowly, my hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I know this much, son. I know that I raised you to be better than this, to be a man of integrity and honor, and I know that somewhere along the way you lost sight of that, lost your way in the pursuit of power and greed." He scoffed, his eyes flashing with contempt. "Spare me the lecture, Dad. You're living in the past, in a world that doesn't exist anymore. This is the real world, and in the real world, you do what you have to do to get ahead, to provide for your family, and secure your future." I shook my head, a deep sadness welling up in my chest. "And what about your soul, son? What about your conscience, your sense of right and wrong? Are those things so easily sacrificed on the altar of ambition and success?" For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a hint of the man I had once known and loved. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced by a cold and unyielding resolve. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "But I can't let you jeopardize everything I've worked for, everything I've built. If that means taking care of you once and for all, then so be it." He raised the gun, his finger tightening on the trigger, and in that moment, I knew that I had lost him, that the son I had raised and cherished was gone forever, replaced by a stranger wearing his face. But even as I braced myself for the end, even as I prepared to meet my fate with whatever dignity and courage I could muster, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction, a flicker of triumph in the face of my own demise. Because I had done what I had set out to do, had exposed the truth and the lies that had been festering beneath the surface of our family for so long. And in doing so, I had flipped the narrative, had shattered the illusion of the perfect, upstanding citizens that my son and daughter-in-law had so carefully cultivated. And that, in the end, was worth any price I might have to pay, any sacrifice I might have to make. Even if that price was my own life, my own blood spilled on the floor of the home I had once shared with the people I loved most in the world. With a final defiant smile, I closed my eyes and waited for the inevitable, my heart at peace, and my soul ready for whatever lay ahead. But the shot never came. The silence stretched out between us, thick and heavy with tension. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat, the ragged breaths that tore from my lungs as I waited for the end, for the bullet that would snuff out my life like a candle in the wind. But the shot never came. Instead, I heard a sound that made my eyes fly open in surprise, the sound of the gun clattering to the floor, of my son's breath hitching in his throat like a sob. I stared at him, my mind reeling with shock and confusion. He was standing there, his face crumpled and his eyes brimming with tears, his hands shaking at his sides like leaves in a storm. "I can't do it," he whispered, his voice raw and broken. I can't kill my own father, no matter what he knows or what he's done. I felt a rush of emotion, a tidal wave of relief and grief and love that threatened to overwhelm me. I took a step towards him, my arms outstretched in a gesture of comfort and forgiveness. But he backed away, shaking his head frantically. "No, Dad, don't. I don't deserve your forgiveness, your understanding. I've done terrible things, things that can never be undone or forgotten." I stopped, my heart aching with the pain of his words. "Son, listen to me. It's not too late. You can still make this right. Still turn away from the path you've been on and start anew." He let out a harsh laugh, the sound like broken glass. "Make it right? How?" "By turning myself in, by confessing to all the crimes and misdeeds I've committed, by destroying everything I've worked for, everything I've built." I shook my head, my voice gentle but firm. "No, son, by being honest, by taking responsibility for your actions and facing the consequences with courage and integrity, by showing the world that you're more than your mistakes, more than the lies and the deceit that have brought you to this point." He stared at me, his eyes searching mine for some sign of deception or manipulation. But all he found was love, a deep and unwavering devotion that had never faltered, even in the face of his darkest deeds. "I don't know if I can do it, Dad," he said, his voice small and lost. "I don't know if I'm strong enough, if I have the courage to face what I've done and who I've become." I stepped forward, placing my hands on his shoulders and looking him straight in the eye. "You are strong enough, son. You have always been strong enough, and you won't be facing this alone. I will be there with you, every step of the way, no matter what happens or where this road takes us." For a long moment he just stared at me, his face a mask of conflicting emotions, and then slowly he nodded, a single tear slipping down his cheek. "Okay, Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it. I'll turn myself in, face the consequences of my actions. But I need you to promise me something first." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "Anything, son. Just name it." He took a deep breath, his eyes boring into mine with a fierce intensity. "Promise me that you'll look after Julia, that you'll make sure she's taken care of no matter what happens to me. She's not innocent in all of this, but she's not the monster I've become either. She deserves a chance to start over, to build a life that's not tainted by my sins." I hesitated for a moment, torn between my love for my son and my sense of justice and righteousness. But in the end, I knew that I could not deny him this one last request, this final act of grace and compassion. "I promise, son," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I will do everything in my power to ensure that Julia is safe and cared for, no matter what the future holds." He nodded, a flicker of relief passing over his face. And then, with a final anguished look at me, he turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps heavy with the weight of his guilt and his regret. I stood there for a long moment, my mind reeling with the events of the past few minutes. I had come so close to death, so close to losing everything that mattered to me in this world. And yet, in the end, I had found something far more precious, far more valuable than any victory or vindication. I had found my son again, the man I had always known he could be, the man who had the strength and the courage to face his demons and make amends for his sins. And as I sat down heavily in my chair, my head in my hands, and my heart full of a bittersweet mix of joy and sorrow, I knew that I would never forget this moment never forget the lesson that it had taught me about the power of love and forgiveness, about the unbreakable bonds of family, and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. For I was Walter Dean, a man who had spent his life in pursuit of truth and justice, a man who had faced down the darkest corners of the human soul and emerged stronger and wiser for the experience. And now, as I faced the greatest challenge of my life, the task of rebuilding my family and my legacy from the ashes of betrayal and deceit, I knew that I would not falter, would not shy away from the difficult road ahead. Because I had my son by my side, my partner, in this journey of redemption and grace, and together we would face whatever lay ahead with courage and conviction, with the knowledge that no matter how dark the night or how steep the climb, we would always have each other, always have the love and the strength that had brought us through to the other side. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all, the most precious treasure that any man could ever hope to possess. With a final grateful smile, I pushed myself to my feet and made my way to the door, ready to face the world and whatever challenges it might bring. For I was Walter Dean, a father, a friend, a seeker of truth and justice, and I would never stop fighting for what was right, never stop believing in the power of love to conquer all. Even in the darkest of times, even in the face of the greatest adversity, I would hold fast to that truth, to that unshakable conviction that had guided me through a lifetime of service and sacrifice. And in doing so, I would leave a legacy of my own, a testament to the enduring strength and resilience of the human spirit, to the unbreakable bonds of family, and the transformative power of forgiveness and grace. That was my promise, my vow, my sacred duty, and I would fulfill it with every fiber of my being until the very end of my days. The next few weeks were a blur of activity and emotion, as my son and I began the long and difficult process of unraveling the web of lies and deceit that had brought us to this point. It was a painful and often heartbreaking journey, one that forced us to confront the darkest parts of ourselves and each other, to face the truths that we had long denied or ignored. But through it all, we clung to each other, to the love and the bond that had always been the bedrock of our relationship. We talked for hours on end, sharing our fears and our hopes, our regrets and our dreams for the future. And slowly but surely, we began to heal all, to find a new sense of purpose and direction in the wake of the storm that had nearly torn us apart. For me, that meant stepping back into the role of investigator, of using my skills and my experience to help my son navigate the legal and ethical quagmire that he had created for himself. I worked tirelessly to gather evidence and build a case, to negotiate with prosecutors and law enforcement officials to ensure that he received a fair and just outcome. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I felt like I was running up against a brick wall, when the obstacles and the challenges seemed insurmountable. But I refused to give up, refused to let my son face this ordeal alone. And in the end, my persistence and my determination paid off, as we were able to secure a plea deal that would allow him to serve his time and make amends for his crimes, while still preserving the possibility of a future beyond the walls of a prison cell. For my son, the journey was even harder, a brutal reckoning with the man he had become and the choices he had made. He had to face the consequences of his actions, to stand before a judge and a jury and admit to the wrongs he had done, to the lives he had ruined, and the trust he had betrayed. But even in his darkest moments, even when the weight of his guilt and his shame threatened to crush him, he never wavered in his commitment to making things right, to being the man that he knew he could be. He worked tirelessly to cooperate with the authorities, to provide information and testimony that would help bring his co-conspirators to justice. And he began the long and difficult process of making amends to those he had wronged, of seeking forgiveness and redemption in the eyes of the law and in the hearts of those he had hurt. Through it all, I stood by his side, a constant presence of love and support, of unwavering faith in his ability to overcome this challenge and emerge stronger and wiser for the experience. And as the weeks turned into months and the legal proceedings began to wind down, I could see a change in him, a newfound sense of humility and compassion, a determination to use his talents and his resources for good instead of for personal gain. It was a transformation that filled me with pride and with hope, a reminder of the incredible resilience and strength of the human spirit. And as I watched my son take his first steps down the path of redemption and renewal, I knew that I had been right to believe in him, to stand by him even in his darkest hour. But even as we celebrated this victory, even as we began to look forward to a future free from the shadows of the past, I knew that there was still one more challenge that we had to face, one more battle that we had to fight, and that was the battle for Julia's soul, for the chance to save her from the same fate that had nearly destroyed my son. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, that Julia was deeply entangled in the web of corruption and deceit that my son had helped to create. But I also knew that she was not beyond hope, that there was still a flicker of goodness and light within her that could be nurtured and brought back to life. And so, with my son's blessing and support, I reached out to her, offering my hand in friendship and in forgiveness, inviting her to join us on this journey of healing and redemption. At first, she was resistant, her pride and her fear holding her back from taking that first step. But slowly, gradually, I began to chip away at her defenses, to show her the love and the compassion that she had been denied for so long. I listened to her stories, to the pain and the trauma that had shaped her life and her choices. I offered her my understanding and my support, my unwavering belief in her ability to change and to grow. And bit by bit, I watched as the walls around her heart began to crumble, as the light of hope and possibility began to shine through the cracks. It was a long and difficult road, one that tested my patience and my resolve at every turn. But I refused to give up on her, refused to let her succumb to the darkness that had nearly claimed my son. And in the end, my faith and my love were rewarded as Julia made the decision to turn her life around, to seek help and support in overcoming the demons that had haunted her for so long. It was a moment of pure joy and triumph, a vindication of everything that I had fought for and believed in. And as I watched Julia take her first tentative steps down the path of healing and renewal, I knew that I had been right to keep my promise to my son, to do everything in my power to ensure that she was safe and cared for, no matter what the future held. For in that moment I saw the true power of love and forgiveness, the incredible capacity of the human heart to heal all and to transform, even in the face of the greatest darkness and despair. And I knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what storms we might have to weather, we would face them together, as a family, as a testament to the unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty that had brought us through to the other side. With a final grateful smile, I took Julia's hand in mine and walked with her into the bright, shining future that lay ahead, my heart full of hope and my spirit soaring with the knowledge that anything was possible, as long as we had each other and the courage to face whatever lay ahead. The years that followed were a time of healing and growth, of rebuilding and renewal in the wake of the storms that had nearly torn our family apart. It was a long and often difficult journey, one that tested our strength and our resilience at every turn. But through it all, we clung to each other, to the love and the bond that had always been the foundation of our lives. For my son, the road to redemption was a winding and treacherous one, filled with obstacles and setbacks that would have broken a lesser man. He had to face the consequences of his actions, to serve his time and pay his debt to society. But even in the darkest of times, even when the weight of his guilt and his shame threatened to crush him, he never lost sight of the man he wanted to be, the life he wanted to build. He worked tirelessly to better himself, to learn from his mistakes, and to make amends for the wrongs he had done. He studied and he prayed, he volunteered and he served, he poured his heart and his soul into becoming the best version of himself that he could be. And slowly but surely, he began to emerge from the shadows of his past, to step into the light of a new and broader future. For Julia, the journey was just as arduous, just as fraught with challenges and temptations. She had to confront the demons that had haunted her for so long, to face the pain and the trauma that had shaped her life and her choices. But with the love and the support of our family, with the guidance and the wisdom of those who had walked this path before her, she found the strength and the courage to keep moving forward, to keep fighting for the life she knew she deserved. She sought help and treatment. She surrounded herself with positive influences and healthy relationships. She worked to build a new identity for herself, one that was based on honesty and integrity, on compassion and kindness. And bit by bit, she began to heal all, to find a sense of peace and purpose that had eluded her for so long. As for me, I watched with pride and amazement as my children transformed before my very eyes, as they grew and changed in ways that I never could have imagined. I was there for them every step of the way, offering my love and my support, my guidance and my wisdom. But I also knew when to step back, when to let them find their own way and make their own choices. And through it all, I found myself growing and changing as well, learning new lessons about myself and about the world around me. I discovered a new sense of purpose and meaning in my life, a calling to use my skills and my experience to help others who were struggling with the same challenges and obstacles that we had faced. I became involved with organizations that worked to support families in crisis, to provide resources and guidance to those who were fighting to overcome addiction and abuse, corruption and deceit. I spoke at conferences and workshops, sharing my story and my insights with those who needed to hear them most. And I found a deep sense of fulfillment and joy in knowing that I was making a difference, that I was using my life to bring light and hope to others. But even as I threw myself into this new chapter of my life, even as I reveled in the incredible transformations that I was witnessing in my own family, I never forgot the lessons that I had learned, the truths that had been seared into my soul on that fateful 4th of July. I never forgot the power of love and forgiveness, the incredible capacity of the human heart, to heal all and to transform, even in the face of the greatest darkness and despair. I never forgot the unbreakable bonds of family, the sacred trust that we hold in our hands when we bring new life into this world. And I never forgot the importance of living a life of integrity and purpose, of being true to ourselves and to those we hold most dear, no matter the cost or the consequence. These were the lessons that I carried with me, the truths that guided me through the challenges and the joys of the years that followed. And as I looked back on the incredible journey that had brought us to this point, as I marveled at the strength and the resilience of the family that I had helped to build, I knew that I had found the greatest treasure of all, the most precious gift that any man could ever hope to receive. For I had found my purpose, my calling, my reason for being, and I had found it in the love and the laughter, the tears and the triumphs of the people who meant everything to me. And so, as I sat on the porch of the home that had once been the scene of so much pain and betrayal, watching the sun set over the hills and the fields of the land that I loved, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me, a deep and abiding gratitude for the incredible life that I had been given. I knew that there would still be challenges ahead, that there would still be storms to weather and obstacles to overcome. But I also knew that I had the strength and the courage to face whatever lay ahead, to keep fighting for the truth and the justice that had always been my guiding light. For I was Walter Dean, a father, a friend, a warrior for what was right and good in this world. And as long as I had breath in my body and fire in my soul, I would never stop striving to make a difference, to leave this world a little better than I had found it. That was my legacy, my promise, my sacred duty, and I would fulfill it with every fiber of my being until the very end of my days. It's been 10 years since that fateful 4th of July. 10 years since the day that changed everything for me and my family. And as I sit here in the twait of my years, surrounded by the love and the laughter of my children and grandchildren, I can't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude and wonder for the incredible journey that has been my life. Oh, it hasn't always been easy. There have been plenty of challenges and setbacks along the way, plenty of moments when the old wounds threatened to reopen and the old doubts crept back in. But through it all, we have clung to each other, to the love and the strength that have always been our anchor in the storm. My son has built a new life for himself, one that is based on honesty and integrity, on service and compassion for others. He has found joy and fulfillment in his work, in his family, in the simple pleasures of a life well lived. And every day, I see the man that he has become, the leader and the role model that he has grown into, and my heart swells with pride and with love. Julia, too, has found her way, has carved out a path of healing and redemption that is all her own. She has become a beacon of hope and inspiration for so many who are struggling with the same demons that once haunted her, a living testament to the power of second chances and the resilience of the human spirit. And together they have built a family that is stronger and more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined. A living legacy of the love and the values that have always been the bedrock of our lives. As for me, I have found a new sense of purpose and meaning in this chapter of my life, a calling to use my gifts and my experiences to make a difference in the world. I have become a mentor and a guide, a wise old sage who has seen the best and the worst of what life has to offer. And every day I wake up with a sense of excitement and anticipation, knowing that there is still so much to learn, so much to discover, so much to give back to the world that has given me so much. And so, as I sit here in the warm glow of a summer evening, surrounded by the beauty and the wonder of the world around me, I can't help but feel a sense of peace and contentment, a deep and abiding joy that fills every corner of my being. For I know that I have lived a life that has mattered, that I have made a difference in the world and in the lives of those I hold most dear. I know that I have faced the darkness and the despair, the betrayal and the loss, and I have emerged stronger and wiser and more compassionate for the journey. And I know that no matter what the future may bring, I will always have this moment, this perfect, shining example of what it means to be alive, to be human, to be part of something greater than myself. For I am Walter Dean, a father, a friend, a seeker of truth and justice. And as long as there is breath in my body and love in my heart, I will never stop fighting for what is right, never stop believing in the power of redemption and the promise of a better tomorrow. That is my legacy, my gift to the world. And it is one that I will cherish and protect with every fiber of my being until the very end of my days. If you found Walter's story of love, forgiveness, and the power of second chances inspiring, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales of everyday heroes making a difference in the world. And don't forget to share your own experiences and reflections in the comments below. We all have a story to tell, a lesson to learn, a legacy to leave. By sharing our journeys and our truths, we inspire and uplift each other, and we create a world that is a little brighter, a little more beautiful, a little more full of hope and possibility. So keep shining your light, my friends. Keep fighting for what is right. Keep believing in the power of love to conquer all. The world needs more heroes like Walter Dean, more everyday champions of justice and compassion. And together, we can build a future that is worthy of our highest aspirations, our deepest dreams, one story at a time, one act of courage and grace at a time. The journey begins anew with each and every one of us, so let us go forth with open hearts and unshakable resolve, for the best is yet to come.